Welcome to the 3% Podcast, the bi-weekly podcast presented by the 3% blog and Open Letter. I'm Chad from Open Letter, and I'm joined as always by Tom from Riff Raff.
Hello, hello.
And we're on schedule, but we don't have a ton of topics, so we're just going to talk about stuff, I think, banter a little bit. But I want to start, I have to update you on my computer, and this is mainly because for everyone's benefit who's listening. So my computer never resurfaced from Albuquerque. If you have it and you have my bag and my passport, please send it to me. I would really, really, really appreciate it. I'll give you whatever you want. It would make a big difference. But before I had left, we use Time Machine here in the office, like the Apple Auto Backup program. And it's usually fine. Sometimes we'll get a message that says, your backup failed, and you have to start it over, or try and do it again, or wait a day, or whatever. Anyway, so I had everything backed up. So last week I got a new computer to replace the one that's gone missing, that's been stolen. And I thought, oh, this is perfect. Now I can get all my files. I've been waiting to do subscription mailings and all sorts of stuff because it's impossible to rebuild that. I have to, I can get access to my files. Well, apparently when Time Machine does its dumbass, oh, this backup failed, or doesn't complete itself correctly, it'll leave the file that it's saving. There's a sparse bundle a sparse bundle is the image package that all of your backup is saved in on Time Machine for the sake of space or whatever. If it doesn't complete properly, which happens every so often through no fault of one's own, it leaves it as in progress, and every piece of information is gone. There's no way to access the previous backups that exist within that huge file or this sparse bundle unless it completes its backup properly. I've talked to Apple Care people. I've talked to people that I'm friends with who are good with computers, have given us backdoor hacks to try and access it. We're trying to get closer and closer, but Apple's just yeah, no, if it doesn't do it correctly, you just lose everything. Which, fuck you, Apple. Because that's a shitty system, and the fact that all of your products are not compatible anymore is bullshit. So my files are gone forever, according to every single computer person I've talked to. So the main point of this, for everyone listening, is that I have been rebuilding our subscribers database, going back in time through every single person who took out a subscription over the past 2 years, and sending out the books as soon as every day I send out a new batch of them. So if you're a subscriber and you haven't received 77 yet, hang with me, I'm getting there. Also, if you are a subscriber and you feel at some point in time that you should have gotten a different books, or so you're missing something, if you didn't get night school and you're supposed to, if you didn't get 77, or if suddenly your subscription seems to run out, email me, let me know. I'm doing the best I can reconstructing 11 years of activity through Shopify, bit by bit by bit by bit by bit. Also, fuck you, Apple.
I don't really have anything to add to that. Use a Drive service. That's my advice.
There is a new service that the U of R bought that they're installing on computers slowly but surely that backs up to the cloud, which would be fine. We do have a drive. It does. Time Machine backs up to a drive. We have a hard drive with this file on it. It's just Time Machine's a piece of shit. And I couldn't, what's funny? The funniest thing about this is when I was talking to Apple Care people, I could not get them to hang up on me. Usually it takes nothing, right? You just be well, that's a shitty service. And they're don't swear at me or I'll hang up on you. And this time it's just you honestly market this to people when you know that it can just have this glitch in which you lose all of your information for 11 years of backups. And they're oh yeah, no problem.
Okay.
It's been a couple weeks, man. I have to rebuild all of our sales too. Also, if you're an author or translator and you haven't received royalty payments, I know. Or your royalty statements, I know. I have to recreate all of the database first so I can get all of the sales from in-house sales. Then I have to rebuild all of the sales spreadsheets. I have one from 2014, and I have to build everything up through December of 2019, and then I can do the royalties because I do have a copy of those from the last time that we did them. So that will come too, but and the NEA grant's due on Friday. So yes, this is my life now.
Did I just get an announcement that Open Letter got an NEA grant last year?
We did for this year. So it's you apply in February, and then they announce it usually in November or December, and then they tell you in November or December, and then you make a formal announcement in January, and that starts for that calendar year, and then you apply again in February. So it's a really weird time delay, but because the government was closed, we couldn't announce anything.
Oh, got it.
So until it reopened, and then it was Yeah, and then it was like, okay, you make the announcement tomorrow, and they're like, okay, cool, like good. So yeah, so we got it lower than we usually do. We usually get like we've gotten between 35 and 60, and this time we got 25,000. I'm not sure why, although part of it might have been that there are more people who are eligible. So you want to talk about Amazon? I can get you fired up.
Well, I don't think it's going to get me fired up, but that's the big news past couple of weeks. I'm not entirely sure when the news broke.
It just kind of was released. Like it was
Last
weird.
Thursday, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Amazon announced that they are backing out of, or whatever. They have reconsidered their decision to relocate one of their two new headquarters to New York after an incredible amount of backlash from everyone from local politicians to small business owners to to residents in Queens. And basically, the only people that really wanted it to happen were the mayor and realtors, from what I can tell. So
Was the governor on board with it too?
I think he was on board, but he doesn't seem particularly broken up about it the way
Okay.
that Blasio
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
He's been the most vocal about it. Um, he thought it was going to be a feather in his cap, you
Yeah.
know. And anyway, so rightfully so, everyone is fired up about this and feels that it's possible to fight back against Amazon in some way. I'm not entirely sure how much I agree with that sentiment. I mean, they're
Yeah.
just go do their thing in wherever they are in rural Virginia outside of Washington, D.C. And then I think there is talk of one in, oh God, I'm going to misremember this. Something I want to say in Dallas.
I think it's Nashville.
Nashville, there you go. Yeah, where they're building a large, not necessarily headquarters to the way that New York would have been, but certainly a large
I
office.
heard it was about the healthcare stuff that they want to do
Oh
in
God.
Nashville, and that because Nashville is like some weird hub of like healthcare related companies, so that would make sense. And if like part of the 25,000 jobs were involving that, it would make sense to relocate them to Nashville. But I am totally making this up based on like one conversation I had at a dinner party actually at a kid's birthday party.
Interesting.
So
Yeah, I mean, you must get this a lot too, just because people know you work in books, and there aren't a lot of book people up in Rochester, so that people are like, "Oh, what do you think of Amazon?" Right?
oh no,
It's
this guy's moving to he and his wife are moving to Nashville.
oh,
So
interesting.
they're talking about, and she works in healthcare, but not that part of it. She's a surgeon or a doctor. I don't remember. She does a thing with hospitals.
Which I'm spending a lot of time in lately as I rehab my arm,
Oh
but
man,
that's
that's
here and
rough.
there. It is rough. But anyway, I look. What this taught me about Amazon is that it is heartening and it gets me fired up in a good way. In that more and more people. I mean, it's kind of a weird blessing in disguise in retrospect that one, they chose New York and chose to put themselves under such a microscope because nowhere else in America would have enabled such a close study of so many aspects of what Amazon does that is bad, quite like New York City. Partly because New York is so pro-union and because Amazon is so anti-union. So you had a lot of that getting picked up by like mainstream news sources. Like a lot of what happened had nothing to do with books per se. It was more just like Amazon is evil for these reasons that have nothing to do with crushing independent bookstores. Let's talk about why that's bad. And secondly, the amount of like tax breaks and everything that were getting looked at. Only I think the combination of those two things made New York such a horrible decision for them, but good for all of us who are opposed to this sort of corporate glad handing that enables them to get these sweetheart deals in terms of tax incentives and all that stuff. So now I think more people are aware of what goes on in order to bring a company like Amazon to your city. I mean, I think people knew because of the stupid 2-year courting process.
Yeah.
But now that like a city actually fought back and said, no, we reject this, it does embolden people a little bit more to sort of both look into Amazon and question whether or not it's a good thing that this company has so much power. both in terms of like, how much of the market they dominate and how much political power they're actually gaining by virtue of that control over the market. And I think it's great that more people are thinking about it. On the heels of this announcement last week was, of course, the fact that they are paying zero in federal taxes.
Which is common among so many corporations.
Sure. Right. I mean, they've been given tax credits to open warehouses and distribution centers and offices in various places, and those come with tax credits. And they are just taking advantage of a broken system that wants them to take advantage of them. And it's hard to fault Amazon, entirely. I think a lot of blame should fall on the shoulders of the various municipalities and in the federal government itself that sort of encourage this sort of working within the system to cheat the system sort of thing.
Man, so this is from a few years ago, but you just type in like paid zero corporate taxes. In 2016, that included United, American Airlines, GM, Hewlett-Packard, E-Trade, Lowe's, Procter & Gamble, Xerox. There was one other that was on here that was Pfizer, drug maker Pfizer.
Yeah, and because I don't understand the ins and outs of this sort of nonsense.
I can tell you when I was in business school, we were told explicitly in this class by a guy who walks past our hallway like every day. I see him. He said that it was in a CEO. A CEO absolutely had to pay as little tax as possible. Otherwise, you are violating your role as a CEO by paying taxes. Like, it is absolutely you have to do that. Otherwise, they should fire you immediately, and that your board should get rid of any CEO who's willing to pay taxes that they don't need to, and that they should they do everything they can to make it zero. And this is a business ethics class, mind you.
Sure. I mean, I definitely accept that a lot of people think this way.
I know, it's crazy.
It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy to think that these people should not pay taxes because of how much they are taking advantage of the things that taxes pay for. It's mind-boggling that people can justify this.
Yeah.
Morally. It's just
insane. Totally. That was like one of the last classes I took, where I was just like, I can't do this. I can't.
But I think it's a good thing that people are more aware of it. I think the more people sort of look at these things and sort of, it's interesting with, Pfizer, for example. There are no small pharma corporations, right?
No.
There's no like local independent pharmacologists. That's not a thing, right?
No, I know a guy. I got a number.
In retrospect, I guess I kind of know a guy. But Amazon is an interesting case because there are local independent bookstores who do pay federal taxes, right? Yeah. Including mine, and we pay more in taxes than Amazon, which is mind-blowing, right? Yeah. So it's an interesting opportunity, I think, for booksellers once again to sort of connect with their shoppers and customers and everything, and sort of say, like, look, we're the people that care about other people. We're the people that care about communities, both small and across the country. And we believe in, being honest and contributing because we understand that those things go towards helping people, and because it makes the trains run on time and, paves the road and all those sorts of things. I have plenty of problems with the federal government, and I truthfully really wish my tax dollars did not go to certain aspects of it, including everything to do with the military. Yep. But that's just not the way it works. You have to, you get some good with the bad, and we can try to change the military budget at some point through voting. In the meantime, just pay your fucking taxes, right?
Yeah.
And God, Amazon just gets away with so much murder.
I'm going to say, to play devil's advocate, I've got to try and guess what part of the opposite viewpoint would be, is that by employing so many people and paying them so much, and those people pay taxes, they're essentially contributing to all of that through their employees, but their profits are their own, which is the part that needs to be rectified. And there's no real way to justify it. Every corporation should be paying like 30% of their profits in taxes to the government.
Right. And
period. Full stop.
Right. And it would reduce individual income tax burdens, which would be an incredibly
screwed this year.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, like we are people who, look, we chose to have the jobs we have, and we still pay an incredible amount of taxes. which I don't mind paying, to be
I don't
clear.
either.
It's just compared to people who pay nothing and make so much more
Yep.
while taking advantage of public resources like roads. Um, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. That's all I'm going to say. Like, everyone knows this. I'm sure everyone listening agrees with us. It's just, I do think like we all need to, you know, I feel like I'm sick of this conversation with customers and like family members and people who don't really work in books or anything. And we talk about Amazon and I try to explain why it's so bad from so many different angles. This is just one more. And, you know, maybe it's a good time to sort of remind people, and every little bit where we can get people to pull away from Amazon, I think is a good thing. That's all.
Yeah. So we all know that, but do you know this? After Amazon announced Thursday that it would cancel plans for a new headquarters in New York City, Mayor Lovely Warren is pleading with Amazon leaders to reconsider Rochester. In a statement on Thursday, the mayor says, quote, "The offer our region submitted during the initial search process still stands, and I know Governor Cuomo would be a willing partner to keep this development in New York State. The fact that Amazon has already opted to open a new distribution center in our community as a result of information garnered from the initial submission provides further evidence that our region is an ideal location for HQ2. The mayor adds, quote, "I have no doubt that the city of Rochester would be an excellent home for Amazon and its employees. Our city has been home to some of the most innovative companies in the world, and I believe Amazon should look again at all we have to offer. Rochester's offerings include a geographic position central to many of North America's largest cities and population centers, a brilliant workforce powered by 19 colleges and universities, a growing downtown innovation zone, and an excellent quality of life boosted by a low cost of living, short commute times, a thriving arts and entertainment scene, and beautiful natural resources that are the envy of other cities. Rochester has an incredible history of tenacity, resilience, and innovation, characteristics we share with Amazon. For these reasons and more, I hope Amazon will take another close look at our region." Amazon says it has no plans to search for a new location. End story.
Do you feel like that's a little? This is what's so embarrassing about America in the year 2019. That sort of like
This is?
groveling is so disgusting. And I feel like your mayor is sort of only half-heartedly doing that because he must know that this is not a possibility. And secondly, it's just a way she can run on some sort of like pro-corporate or pro-business jobs, pro-jobs sort of platform next election and say, look, I fought for Amazon. We didn't get it, but I fought for it.
Dude. I don't know that would be the case under certain other circumstances. It would take more than this podcast to explain the entire situation surrounding this mayor's tenure and regime, and like the various forms of corruption in Rochester right now, and like the people who have been all her appointees that are in jail, and like the kickback that the federal government is investigating with all of our major what do you call those people that build stuff, like development contractors that the mayor's office is involved in. It's like it's way more fucked up. Like, I don't think that she needs to even pretend this to like try and run. It's like everything's such a mess. It's such a mess. You have no idea. It's crazy.
Anyway,
you should just Google Mayor Lovely Warren and controversy sometime, and you'll go down a rabbit hole.
Can't be worse than our old history.
No,
anyway.
It's definitely not. But it's pretty awesome. If you put in Mayor Lovely Warren into Google, your options are email, investigation, accomplishments. Yep.
So that was good news in the Amazon department this week. I'm sure they're still doing fantastic business, and it will not hurt them one bit.
What were their profits last year? It was like, I saw something about this, and it was like some crazy number.
Yeah. So I saw this on Twitter the other day, and I can't remember who exactly.
$11 billion in profit.
A bookseller from, I don't want to I think he's from Brookline Booksmith. I can't remember his name. I'm very sorry. But had this rant on Twitter about how
I know what you're talking about.
Authors whose books are coming out start doing this thing where they say you can pre-order here, and pre-order sales are great for driving up the print run and sort of showing support. And I mean, very few of them actually get on a bestseller list, but if you can concentrate, because pre-order sales count as first week sales, and so There's a chance you can get on a bestseller list. Even a regional bestseller list helps people. So they start sending out emails and to their friends and family, or posting it on social media, whatever. And the vast majority, let's be clear, do send out a link to fucking Amazon. And it's insulting because it's frustrating, because so many of these people then turn around and say that they love independent bookstores and love the work we do and blah, blah, blah. And yet when they send out these links for pre-orders, all they refer people to is Amazon, as if we booksellers haven't ordered these books 6 months ago and, couldn't easily just, earmark one to go to you when they come in. Which, part of that is on us. We need to make customers more aware of that. But really, authors, translators, anybody out there, my dog is howling, I'm very that we need to, tell people, and look, I understand that authors and translators are not necessarily they're doing other things. They don't necessarily understand the way that this impacts a bookstore or, an independence business and all that sort of stuff. I get that. But if you really want to help your book in the long term, it's better to make friends with an independent bookstore than it is to get sales on Amazon. And the best way to do that is to link to, it's not the best solution at this time, but IndieBound will send you to an independent bookstore in your area. If you have favorite bookstores, if you are from Boston, send them to a Boston bookstore. If you're in New York, send them to a New York bookstore. That your friends and family will be happy to order it that way. And, it works out for everybody instead of sending people to Amazon.
Well, once Andy Hunter takes over IndieBound and makes it better, I'll bet that will be the case.
I am very curious about to see this iteration. I don't know what the timeline is on this, but
I just tried to order the Noscilla trilogy because someone was talking about it today, and I think this book is going to be everyone's like year-end best book, and it's not deserving of that. But that's neither here nor there. But you can where's this shipping from? So I put it in here. Estimated ship date is the 20th. So I guess it comes out today. Oh, I need a book that's not out yet. But it just takes you to the final thing, and you can just check out. It doesn't tell you where it'll come from by a store or anything like that, which I felt.
Does it matter?
No, I'm just curious. They don't have a warehouse.
No.
They're not who's fulfilling this order?
That's an interesting question. I don't know how it works.
Are they fulfilling it through Ingram or Baker and Taylor, and then the money's going to IndieBound? I don't want to give them money any more than I want to give anyone else money.
In theory, it's supposed to go to the closest independent bookstore with stock.
Okay, so what's a future forthcoming book that's good?
Oh God, I don't know.
Flowers of Mold. I'll order our own book. It got a starred review today in Publishers Weekly and is very awesome. Okay, so I want to pre-order it now. I should just.
You're on the IndieBound website.
I'm on the IndieBound website, so it's just taking me to a thing. Oh my God! Never mind. I clicked remove because I had 2 books in there, and it just removed everything. So, I can start over. Fuck this thing. Okay. It's $15.95.
While you do this, and I will wait to the final result, I want to put a call out to any bookseller, bookstore owner, anybody who actually does this order fulfillment through IndieBound specifically. I would be very curious to know how this works, and I would love to have them on this podcast to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I'm genuinely curious, because no one has ever brought it up to me. No one at ABA or NEBA or anyone. I've not heard anyone talk about it, quite frankly, about using it, about the partnership deal. And I would love to know who is actually involved in it, and in what way and how it works exactly.
This is a really expensive idea, but I feel like ordering the same book from Powell's and from IndieBound and see what happens. And then try and return them or something and see what happens to their customer service and everything.
Right, because that would reveal where it came from, I suppose.
Yeah, it really would. I mean, the Powell's one is the same price and everything. But it would be $15.95 plus economy mail of $2.38. I don't know where it's calculating that from.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is there a better book that's coming out that's not one of that I don't own?
What does that matter?
I mean, because I don't want to order a book that I want to order a book that I want. Like, I don't want to order a book that
Oh,
that I'm producing. Like, that seems, if I'm going to spend $20 on this, like, what about, hmm, hmm,
how about this? This will segue into our type in "lie with me."
uh, that didn't come up with anything.
"Lie with Me" by Philippe Besson. No?
No. Oh, wait. It did the second time. It didn't on the first search bar because anybody didn't have it. Okay, so the publication is April 30th. That's perfect. So tell me about this book.
So I don't know much about the book itself. All I know is that it's by a French guy named Philippe Besson, that it did very well in France. Cannot remember the exact numbers, the sales numbers, which are, of course, taken with a grain of salt because their market is, a third the size of ours, maybe even smaller. But apparently did very well, was, acclaimed, won some prize, and is being published by Scribner here in the U.S. and translated by Molly Ringwald.
The Star of Riverdale.
Star of Riverdale. Does anyone think of her as the Star of Riverdale?
Archie's probably a Star of Riverdale, although I think my daughter would argue that Jughead is the Star of Riverdale, and he was like on a famous kids show that I never watched.
Okay, my point is no one's first recollection when I say Molly Ringwald, no one is picturing Riverdale.
Maybe not, but they should.
To me, she's the Breakfast Club, and that's it. And I mean, like, that's.
I met her in Los Angeles once at the LA Festival of Books. Yeah, so why is she translating this?
I don't know. I mean, look, people develop hobbies and interests, and that's all well and good. And if she wants to translate from the French, I have no problem with that. I'm just my point in bringing this up is I wonder if we might be entering something resembling an era of the celebrity translator.
That would be really funny.
Like, we don't have any celebrity translators. Like, I can't think of one translator who is known to a wider audience.
Oh yeah, like LeBron James.
Right.
Like the LeBron James of translation.
What if Dirk Nowitzki retires this year and starts translating from German to English?
Holy shit. We should contact him right now. I think that would be amazing.
Well, I guess he would do English to German, right? Like,
yeah, I suppose so.
Starts translating like Dennis Johnson into German. Like,
who would? Yeah, wow. Who would be? Porzingis isn't doing shit right now. That dude could be working a lot.
He needs some more life experience before I think. Did he go to college? I don't think so.
I don't know. Do they have college in Latvia?
Wow.
Yeah.
Just gonna ignore that statement.
I can get away with that.
You can get away with that. This is true. But yeah, like, there are no. I mean, who is the world? Who do you, when you think of like celebrity translators, comes to mind?
Oh my god, it would be going the wrong way. It'd be like Edie Grossman, which is not a household name to anyone who's not in translation. So there's like the household name that you would recognize, but also translates. Man,
I think the only, like, Margaret Joel Costa.
Yeah, but no one's gonna know
No one
that.
knows that is Lydia Davis.
Also, but you'd have to be within books. Like someone who's outside of books, like Molly Ringwald. People who've never read a book know The Breakfast Club and Riverdale.
Sure.
To be fair, but not people who don't know books don't know who Lydia Davis is.
Oh God, no. Yeah, she's not Tom Clancy or anything.
No. Oh my God, there has to be someone. I feel like when I've entered in all these books into the translation database, which thank God that's on Publishers Weekly. Otherwise, that entire thing would be gone. By the way, like if Publishers Weekly wasn't hosting that, and my computer was stolen the way it was, and Time Machine sucks the way it does, that entire 11-year history of data would be gone.
Okay, let's say that Molly Ringwald's translation does well.
According to Publishers Weekly, it is smooth and provides emotional impact.
I don't know what that means, but let's say it just so happens to do well and sort of she does the rounds. She's on, I don't know. She's not going to end up on Jimmy Kimmel for this kind of thing. But
Are they gonna are they gonna give her book presentations as a translator that happens to be famous?
this is what I'm wondering. And do you think, imagine the scenario, imagine that this sort of sparks, because I feel like we're in the middle, and I was just thinking about this because I don't know if I told you this, but I had a customer a few months ago who was a flat earther, and
Hell yeah,
wow. And
that
so I
must
was
have been fun.
was watching a documentary about flat earthers last night, and it's just mind blowing how these people can talk themselves into this, version of reality, and it's like an anti-intellectually, right?
Yeah.
It's like a straight up refusal of science or whatever. And so I wonder if and I don't think that like Molly Ringwald translating from French is going to like, be the thing to spark it. But what if it does become this sort of way for people to start finally becoming more curious about things beyond their own lives in a different way? Like, look, we all know there are plenty of intellectuals who, learn foreign languages and travel around the world and learn about other cultures and do all these things. But what if Molly Ringwald doing it can sort of open it up to another generation that previously wouldn't have? And what if other celebrities start getting in on the act? And what if we get James Franco instead of just being a writer and poet? And what if he starts translating? What if he just to learn?
That seems possible. That one seems possible.
It totally seems possible. And we could usher in an era of celebrity translators, which could make translating and translations somehow sexier than they've been.
Okay, so so say that happens. What would the reaction of like Alta and other translators be if they're essentially losing jobs to these people?
I mean, the reason I heard about this, and I can't reveal my sources on this, but is because this was sort of big news in the translation community, because there was a sort of bidding war for this translation,
because she's involved in it.
Because she's involved with it, and this is not, I can't confirm this in any way, shape, or form. I've heard she's getting a lot more, money on a per word basis than any other translator you or I know.
Wow. Wow. Well, if Molly Ringwald's out there, she should listen to this and come on the podcast and explain to us how that all worked.
Again, if this is okay, there are two ways. If you're a translator who's, working away on things, you're relatively unknown, but you can scrap together a living. You're teaching and translating at the same time, right? Like your average sort of Alta member, right? Yeah. There's the way of looking at it where you're pissed off that this woman who's never done it before, who's led a privileged life, can suddenly come in and swoop in and take this job, right?
Yeah.
Be angry about it. And I totally get that. I would totally get that. The other way is, she's like the greatest thing to come along because she's highlighting the translator as opposed to burying them off, in the title page instead of being on the cover.
Yeah.
Right. Like there are two ways to look at it. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Right, because I feel like there could be a backlash, but there could also be, hey, I'm just like, I do the work that Molly Ringwald does. Like, attention to me.
Man, yeah, I feel like that all makes sense, and that it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I feel like most big publishers are gonna be like, yeah, but we don't care. Like,
yeah,
you can do the same work that she does. You can be just as good as she is, but like, we're paying for her brand. We're not paying for her translation.
Right. I mean, that's the issue, is like no translator is going to grow into Molly Ringwald in terms of celebrity, pulling value. It's like, that's just all there is to it. Like, she has celebrity from other things, not from translating.
It's like Dubravka Greshik's old line that like you should become a famous soccer player first and then become an author, because you'll do far better than if you try and be an author and become good at it.
Right. No, it's true. I mean, it's really, it's unfortunate, but yeah, when you work in the shadows at a desk instead of being in TV and movies, you get more publicity. So yeah, I don't know how this is all going to play out, but I am curious.
Interesting.
It's very curious that this is happening. That finally had like not just the celebrity who decides to write a novel, right? Like we've had
Yeah.
plenty of actors who do that sort of thing to varying degrees of success. And I understand why publishers do it, like
Hmm.
pay the bills in order to publish, the National Book Award winners that nobody's going to buy. But, I will say it's funny. I just had a customer the other day, and I feel like I don't get it very often, but Emma was telling somebody else about this, like that, we get these people who push back against the simple idea that a book is translated and that is therefore not good, right? There's
Yeah.
not their time because it might be flawed or whatever. Had a guy come in the other day, and I'm, trying to straighten up a table, and he comes over and he's like, "Have you read this?" And he shows me a copy of Berlin Alexanderplatz
Hmm.
in the New York Review of Books translation.
Yeah.
I was like, I've read that, but I haven't read that translation. I read the previous edition that was done by, I can't even remember, some British publisher that I think is now defunct.
Quartet, maybe? No. That's wrong.
I can't remember. They had like it was three circles in the shape of a triangle logo.
Oof.
God, it was a long time ago. This is like 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember when the NYRB edition came out, but it's Michael Hoffman, right?
Right.
And I said, I've read it, but I haven't read that edition. And he's like, yeah, that's sort of the issue. I don't know, like translations, like, is it really any good? Don't you feel like you're missing something? And I was like, wow, you're actually saying these words aloud. This is crazy. And so it's my story. I can get away with this. So I said, like, you're not going to win this argument with me. Like, this is sort of our thing. My wife's a translator, like, we firmly believe in the value of, reading these books is, worth more than not being able to read them at all, right? Unless you learn the foreign language of every book that you might have an interest in. And yes, it's a different animal. It's not exactly the same thing, but that's fine. I still think it's worth reading these books. He's like, okay. No, you're right. And he's a good translator? Yeah, he's a great translator. So he bought it, but like, wow, that like aversion is strong.
It's real.
It is a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that is that's pretty wild that someone would ask you that in your store, of all places.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think he was looking too closely at the books on the table, like
yeah.
3/4 of them are translated. So,
But yeah, that I'm not surprised. I mean, you kind of come across it. That whole like loss thing is the weirdest to me. Like,
it's a weird thing
because it's like it makes this weird assumption. I mean, there's a lot of assumptions with it. One is privileges the original as if like the original is a work of genius and this is somehow secondary. And that argument we've gone on about a lot. But it also sort of it gives credence to like if you wrote in English, you're not going to miss anything. But there's a lot of English books that are garbage and that have like really unclear language within them. Like it's not just because it was originally written in English it's suddenly like that much better and you're not missing anything or losing out on anything just because it was written on English.
Right. Like go read Thomas Pynchon. I mean, it's not easy. You're going to miss some things.
Dude, I've been listening to Against the Day at the gym for now 7 weeks. I have listened to about 13 hours of it. Well, while I'm running because I have the and you can yell at me for this, but I have the Kindle edition because it's really hard to listen to and not see on the page or see because it's Pynchon, right? So I have to be able to like look at it. And I've listened to like 13 hours. I have 40 hours left in this book. I'm on like page 300 of 1,000 pages.
Jesus.
I don't know that I'm ever going to finish. But I love every part of it. I love reading it now. Like when I read it when it first came out, like I got to like, I don't even remember, like page 700, 800 and had to quit. But it was when it came out right before I moved here to Rochester. So it was like as we're packing up our house, leaving Delkey, starting a whole thing. I'm trying to read this like 1,000-page difficult book. And at some point I just like couldn't do it. But this time it's so much more enjoyable because I feel like I'm a smarter reader. I'm older. And going slow through it and keeping track of like all the different people is way more gratifying than just trying to like read it to have read it at that point in time back in like 2006 when it first came out. But it's super fun. I'm really enjoying it. But like I will be reading this. I ran a fucking half marathon so that I could get more of this book done, and I think I ended up reading like 50 pages the entire half marathon, or listening to 50 pages.
The whole point being, yes, the idea that just because something is written in your native language, it's instantly like more accessible or whatever, and you're not losing something is crazy because no one ever truly understands everything about anything they read. I mean, that's just the way it is. And Yeah, it's frustrating.
We can go right up into like a solipsistic black hole with that too. Like, how do you know you understand it in the first place?
Right.
Like,
Right.
how can you ever prove that you understood it the same way? It's like one of the things. Like, I know that I'm sure that you would have preached this at some point in time too. But like in my class, when I'm like, "What are you guys trying to translate? What's your idea for like being faithful to the text?" And they're like, "Oh, replicating what the author wanted to say to his readers and in English or whatever." I'm like, "How do you even know that? Like, how do
Yeah.
you, how do you begin to know that? Like, that sounds great." And like, there's all these platitudes we use with like fidelity and like faithfulness that are like, when you stop and think about them logically, are kind of nonsense, but they sound great.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I always, the way I've thought of, like, I guess when I first learned a foreign language, I would do that thing in your head where you're just sort of doing the automatic translation. But
Hmm.
I treated it as like, because I was not writing or reading anything when I first learned French. It was all in my head. And so I would treat it as okay, this phrase means this. Now, what does it mean
Yeah.
in the context of this sentence? And that's sort of how I translate now. It's like you parse it out and then try to put it together into a larger thing. But and I'm trying to suss out meaning from those things as I put them together. But fuck, man, everybody's going to do that a different way.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And
the
what
idea
was the
that like
intent on using this word versus this other word? You're just
exactly
guessing.
right, right. And Emma does that a lot. She's very good at pointing out like, well, they know they used this word because they didn't use this one, which would be the direct way of saying this in English. And it's like, okay, like you could totally overthink everything, but at the same time, you kind of need to overthink everything.
Yeah.
You're also you're also guaranteed to be wrong a good portion of the time. And this is why like I don't know how we ended up back on this, but like the whole idea that like somebody reviews a translation and nitpicks a word choice, it's like God, fuck off. Like it's just there are 70,000 words in this book and you're choosing one to pick on. It's just nonsense, you
I
know?
do. I agree with that. Although I do think that there are patterns in the book, in any book, in English and in translations, that create the tone or the style of it, that you can, without saying like this is right or wrong from the original, but like this tone doesn't work for this,
Yeah,
and
sure.
this pattern of words makes this character not function, or like the book veers off course because it becomes like almost a parody of itself because it's not, because of the word choice. So I think there are ways that like even, but and that's true of English books too. Like there are times where it's like badly written.
Right. No, when a word stands out, it stands out, and that's all there is to it. What you're talking about is like the pattern, like
Yeah.
that's the thing. But if it's just, I mean, if it's not like noticeable to 99% of the readers, and then like one critic comes in to say like this is wrong, like I don't know. I feel like that's not a good use of time. I don't think it's a good use of precious space to talk about the book as a whole, as opposed to like focusing on word choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway, we can rehash that argument the next time
yeah.
there's an article in the New York Review of Books.
Million times, million times. So the other thing that we want to talk about, we talked about AJ Finn the other day, and the last podcast, and there's a new article that came out shortly thereafter about Dan Mallory. This is the guy that like lied about his dying mother and his cancer and all sorts of things and his bipolar nature and whatever. Well, apparently there's a book called by Sarah Denzel called Saving April, which was published before he sold, several months before he sold his novel to William Morrow, and it is basically the exact same story. Like plot wise, I basically identical. They go through like the whole, in this New York Times article, they go through the both of the plots, and they're like remarkably the same. And obviously they can't sue for plagiarism because that's not just like plot based or whatever, but it's kind of eerie to see how close they are. And the thing that sucks about it is that this woman, Sarah Denzel, gets all these reviews on Goodreads being like, why did you rip off The Woman in the Window by AJ Finn? Like, has to be like, no, my book came out first by a lot, by like years. But people are like, no, 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 you must have stolen this from AJ Finn. So this guy continues to profit hugely off of something that I'm now fairly convinced, just based on two profile pieces, that he just is a complete fraud and like basically stole this book.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like the most trustworthy, you know, individual. Whether it's something, that with an actual illness, or he's just, that sort of devious person. Something seems amiss with
Yes.
every aspect of his life, and that's I don't know. How can all of these other things that indicate that he's been lying be true, but that he didn't do that? Do you know what I
Right.
mean? So I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
what
I don't
comes
trust him.
razor? If it seems pretty obvious that he ripped it off, like he probably ripped it off. You
Yep.
know?
That's hard. We can get it. We could just say it. Throw an allegedly in there, and we're safe from legal recourse. I
Sure.
think allegedly ripped it off.
I will say, like, since that we talked about that on the podcast, and it sort of had like the report you're talking about with the plagiarism allegations, and it's become more and more in the news in the publishing world. I've talked to people, and everyone is just like, "What is this book he wrote? I've never heard of this book." So
That's
I,
funny.
my friends have good taste, I suppose.
I mean, I've seen this book. I've seen the cover of it like a billion times. Oh, I know something else I wanted to talk about related to that. So I thought this was when you were talking about the Twitter thing. I thought this was what you were going to talk about. That I forget who it was, but it was a bookseller talking about how I think it was a bookseller, and I know Dustin Kurtz replied to them, but they were complaining that at bookstores, like it's frustrating that like staff picks are just like the big popular books that don't necessarily need to be staff picked, and that is sort of lame. And I wondered if you had a take on that. I wish I could find the
Uh,
actual opening tweet, but it was basically that was the gist of it. Like, do we really need to put like these books that are already getting all this attention as staff picks here, and not support something else?
I mean, I understand the sentiment because it does. There's limited space in every store, no matter how big they are, for staff picks. And so if you're taking up a spot by recommending Moby Dick, like it sucks that some smaller, less heralded thing that a customer may never have thought of reading is not getting that recognition and recommendation. But I do think Dustin's sort of argument, which I'm just going to summarize as you never know who might need a nudge to read a classic and then come back and get more adventurous on the next read. You know,
Yeah,
readers of all experience levels and different levels of exposure to different things require different things. You know, if somebody goes into a bookstore once a year and that one time it's the time that they happen to notice a staff pick for Jesus' Son, which, at this point we'd think everyone under the sun has read it. Like, is that such a bad thing? I don't know.
see, I don't take it as that way. I was thinking more of like, and this isn't to throw this book under the bus, but it's the first book that comes to mind of like Valeria Luiselli's new book. Like, you don't need a staff pick that really. Like, it's hot right now. But when
It's
it's
hot in
not,
art circles. It's
when
not Stephen King hot.
yeah, I mean it's out there pretty widely. Like, that's more what I thought they're talking about. Like, that it's fine. There's nothing wrong with her book, and if you staff pick or whatever, that's cool. But I mean something of that ilk that's like, or this Woman in the Window that's like
Those
a
are
bestseller.
two totally different things. Like, I think a bestseller like that, yeah, or like a Gone Girl. If you're staff picking Gone Girl at this
That's
point,
yeah. Or like
big,
when it comes out. So not even like that it's years have gone by or whatever. But when it comes out, if it's a bestseller, I think Valeria's book is like going to be a bestseller.
it might be. I hope it is. But it's clearly more literary and is not going to appeal to the masses in the way that, like, AJ Finn's book or anything like that. I think it's just, I still think like promoting a Mexican American novel like that, by a woman is definitely worth promoting. I get that.
Yeah, I
I
just chose that because it's the first book that comes to mind.
Yeah.
I was,
No,
and there's
like,
again nothing about that book is just I can't think of a single book. I'm like looking through the list of books coming out in 2019 and not remembering any of these, so I can order something from IndieBound. My memory is not working right now.
it's funny. I'm in the store for like 3 hours a day at this point because I still can't work really.
Mm-hmm.
Can't pick things up and can't bartend or make coffee or anything like that. So I'm kind of useless. So I'm doing most of the like behind the scenes stuff. And so yeah, I'm there and I take a look at the tables. I'm like, oh, that came out and that came in and blah blah blah. And then I leave and I can't remember anything.
it's, like, it's it's bad.
It's very frustrating.
Yeah,
But that is out. Emma's reading it now. She's really enjoying it.
the Valeria book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it. I'm gonna read it eventually. I think I'm gonna read it in May.
Yeah, I'm gonna read it when she's done. We're going up to Boston to see her do an event there. She's not coming here, unfortunately. We're still a little too small for
Oh,
the.
she's coming here.
Is she?
Next spring? Yeah, she's coming to do
I
a
think our problem
special
is-
event here. So is
Uh,
Masha Gessen.
Yeah, I mean she's done things at Brown, but I think doing them at our bookstore. She's probably a little too big to do things at our bookstore, but also
Yeah,
probably too small for anyone to send her to our bookstore, if that
that's
makes sense.
fair.
We're also so close to Boston that a lot of publishers still just think of us as a suburb of Boston, even though no one I know really goes to events in Boston, so
Yeah.
or to Boston at all unless they work there. Anyway, it's another gripe for another story. Yeah, that's the thing. I do think there's a lot of factors too. And Dustin's other point in the staff recommendation things is like booksellers themselves need to be empowered to make those sort of staff picks. And I think if their tastes are like really off the wall weird, they might not feel like they can start recommending those books right away because their bosses might be like, what the hell's wrong with you? Or, whatever. They need to sort of grow into the way that the system works. And I think that's totally fine that, if somebody's, first couple of recommendations are like classics that they've loved their whole life and that sort of thing. And they sort of understand eventually how the whole business works and that sort of thing. And look, but yes, it's still bad if, a very seasoned, experienced bookseller is recommending Stephen King. Like, yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, that doesn't need to happen.
It just doesn't need to happen. You're right. It's like related to like a lot of booksellers this year that I've been talking to are finally just so fed up with the Indie First or whatever that thing is called, Indie Next, that the ABA sponsors, which is like this list of books that we're supposed to like recommend and, all of that sort of thing. And like half of them will just be big house books that are already getting
How much
attention.
Someone told me that be top listed on there, you have to pay $10,000 to be and based on where you are in that top 10 part of it, you pay a different amount. And that if you're a small nonprofit, you can sort of negotiate it down, but like they generally will ask for like over $1,000, $2,000, depending on where you are within it. And if you can't pay that, then you get bumped down to like the lower portion of it.
Well, that's depressing.
Yeah. So like we've never been asked to do it. We've tried many, many times to get people to recommend our books for it. And I just feel like I would like to be asked and find out more of that information. Maybe our books aren't popular enough, but I've known people have written in a lot of them. And I feel like it's basically a pay to play for ABA to highlight the people that they want to highlight. And like with this new thing that they talked about, that publishing caucus thing that I yelled about last podcast, like it's just going to go, that's just going to be another edition which they're highlighting the big indie presses that they already want to have involved, instead of like actually being like democratic in any way, shape, or form, or like actually supporting good books and not books that have money behind them. That's my complaint.
Yeah, I mean, from my end as a bookseller, this Indie Next thing is basically everybody sort of emailing me and saying, hey, would you rate and review this book we're trying to get on Indie Next for whatever month, right?
Yeah.
And my understanding is it doesn't require all that many reviews or whatever.
Well, it must. If we had like 7 and 8 and we didn't get on there, it's got to be higher than that.
Yeah, but 20. Like 20 is not that many.
Okay.
In the grand scheme of things. How many booksellers are there in the country,
How many books are there that they could choose from at that time?
I mean, it's all who runs these campaigns. Like, I could do it to literally any book I want in an Edelweiss blog. Anything.
Yeah.
Anything at all. But I get these emails from small presses that are encouraging me to pick this one book because they're trying to, do this thing. I think book publishers single out things that they think would be like these, like their, I don't want to say it's like their A-list book, but they do pick a book once a season because you don't want to do this every month, right? So they pick a book and they put a little campaign in behind it and among booksellers and try to get them to nominate it and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Don't know what the next step is, like what you're talking about. What happens once they get that nomination? I have no idea, but I'm sure it costs money.
It costs a lot of money, and it costs more depending on how many on where you get onto that Indie Next list.
Right.
This was one of the conversations at Winter Institute that was very beneficial and kind of frustrating.
Yeah. So for anyone who isn't listening or doesn't know what this is, it's basically independent bookstores who print out these lists. And if they do it, they'll put up a little display that says Indie Next, and it's like all the independent bookstores across the country are behind these books. And I think it's like 15 a month. I can't remember.
There's a bunch. So February, the number one book was Made, Hard Work, Low Pay, and A Mother's Will to Survive. I know that space, that placement for that is like $15,000.
And
It's
so,
Hachette. Here's the publishers. Hachette, Knopf for Valeria. That's the second highest one. Then University of Texas for the Tribe Called Quest book, which I finished. Grey Wolf, Norton, William Morrow, St. Martin's, Riverhead, Celadon, I can't read that. Echo, Viking, Little Brown, Algonquin, Source Books, Park Row, SJP for Hogarth, little Sarah Jessica Parker action going on there. Harper, Knopf, Galley Scout Press with that cat person book, which I don't believe anyone in the world likes, and Atria.
those are all major publishers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are all like a lot of imprints of whatever, Macmillan and that sort of thing. Anyway, if anyone doesn't know, like then if you go into an independent bookstore that does this, they will have those books on display in quantities, and then there's a little like flyer that you're meant to hand out that goes with these books. I think if I order them all, I get some sort of discount, like extra discount on these books or something. I have no fucking idea. We don't have the space for it. I would not sell most of those books. So we don't even like, we're not even aware of this.
Yeah.
I do occasionally when I get these emails that ask me to help support like whatever small press book, I do it. If I've read it, or even if I've dipped into it, I try to help them. If they think it's valuable to them as they try to publish this book, I'm willing to help them do that. But for the large presses, I don't even think about it, honestly. So I think it needs a revamp. I think they need, because a lot of booksellers feel the way we do, which is like, this is garbage. I don't care about this. Like, and it's also, it's weird to have something nationally branded that most customers have no fucking idea what it is. So it's not like you're putting up like New York Times bestsellers, right? Like that's a thing people know about.
Yeah.
You're this indie next thing that is like very nebulous and a complicated, it's whatever. It's not worth it.
It probably overlaps a lot with the New York Times bestseller list
Right.
these days. Which is the part that frustrates me from a publisher side and from a consumer side of like the sort of those, and when I was a bookseller, it used to piss me off too, of like the confluence between the New York Times bestseller, the Cultural Moment, Barnes & Noble, and an indie bookstore. When those are all one, everything's lost. The game is over.
Right. And that's the frustrating thing, and that's why we would never do it. It's like, how is this any different than just being like looking at Amazon's bestsellers?
Yeah, and the publishers can spend all the money on the same book in these 4 different outlets and get all that result.
Yes.
Silly,
Exactly.
stupid. I wish ABA was smart. So if I'm going to pre-order a book on IndieBound, which of these do you recommend? Article 353 by Tanguy Viel. This coming out from Other Press. I read one of his books years ago. I was going to say Nada by Manchette, but that doesn't come out for months and months and months and months and months. I don't want to wait that long. Max Problem by Enrique Villamatas or Star by Yukio Mishima.
Which should you get? Get the Mishima.
Yeah, what should I order?
Mishima, come on, he's great.
I think that his is the one that's the furthest out. So our little test will take a while.
That's all right.
It comes out in April
hopefully
30th. The other book comes out in the beginning of March, so we'd know like how this works pretty early on. I might just do that just because it would be quicker. I'm curious as to like what's going to happen when I pre-order a book through IndieBound.
Yeah,
I'm really the first person ever.
Yeah.
But okay, so I got to go teach in a minute and pretend that I read all these excess articles that I made my students read. To be fun. But do you have any rants or raves? I think we have a similar rant or similar rave. I mean,
I don't know about that.
About Brockmire.
Oh, I mean, you want to talk about Brockmire by all means. It was recommended by a friend to me, and it's been a thing I watch while I'm rehabbing my arm.
How far are you now? I just finished season 1.
I'm like a third of the way through season 2.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna watch it last night late, but I didn't. And so I started watching The Good Place, which is also fun. But I love that. I love Brockmire. It's so fun. It's such a entertaining show.
Yeah. That's all. I'm reading the Bolaño. It's Bolaño. It's good. It's nothing earth-shattering or anything, but it is good. That's all I've got for now.
Yep, I reread T. Singer for class today, and I've been rereading all the books for my class. But I've been reading also all these Quebec books, which is pretty entertaining. There's the one that I wrote about today is from Esplanade Books or Vehicle. It's like the fiction imprint of Vehicle, and it's about like the Inuit part of Quebec, which is pretty cool. And it's like nothing that I would normally pick up because it's fairly straightforward, like little interesting things in the writing and the style. But it's pretty brutal and an interesting short little book that I don't think is being distributed here, unfortunately. But it's been cool to read these things because I mean, it's again like all this about like Canada's right there. All these books are coming out, and yet they don't get a lot of attention here in the States. And like it's very easy, even from my own not wanting to be biased perspective, to be like, oh yeah, I could read that, or I could read this like Argentine novel that I'm really interested in and I know much more about. So it's been nice to like sort of force myself into reading a bunch of them.
It's funny when you talk about the Inuit part of Quebec. I just listened to a short podcast. It was like 4 episodes or something about Thunder Bay.
Oh yeah, I downloaded that and I started listening to it on the plane. I fell asleep, not because of it, but I had to restart it.
It's really interesting, dealing with a long-standing history of horrible abuse that Native Canadians, people who moved to this city, Thunder Bay, have suffered by the white people who live there. And my God, it's just staggering, just what goes on. And I don't know, it's interesting. Yeah, I wish we knew more about it. And you will have to send me the name of this book.
It's Nirliit, Nirliit, and the post that will be up before this podcast goes live on 3% will have a whole like serious write up about it. Like I did get into describing most of it in like a normal way, and then the post goes off the rails. So if you get to word 2,600 and then all of a sudden it's a bunch of jokes, then you can stop if you want to.
Okay.
But that part's in the beginning part. It's like the serious part.
No, I'm not finding it.
It's not on there yet. It goes up at 1 o'clock. But the book, I don't think that they distribute it here.
All right. Anyway.
All right. I'll send it to you. Cool. Yeah, I got to go try and teach. I will talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.